RFK Jr. minutes ago on the Tucker Carlson show just said, "I am working to help Trump get elected." Okay, and I think this is a really important clip, and I'm going to play a couple other clips as well. But I think this helps to give a lot of stubborn Kennedy supporters a glimpse of the future and why this is such an important decision for Kennedy and also just for the future of this country. So get excited. I think this is really interesting.
I'm going to work to get him elected, and I'm working with the campaign. We're working on policy issues together. I've been asked to go onto the transition team, and to help pick the people who will be running the government, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to fight. I don't know what would happen to me if we lose.
Well, that's kind of it. I mean, a lot of people I know personally and I'm friends with have gone to prison. One of them's in prison right now, Pavel Durov. There are others. Uh, like, what happens if he loses to you?
If
Trump loses and Kamala Harris becomes president.
Oh, I don't know, but I mean, I know I don't. I never really think about that.
Good.
What I think is, okay, here's what I got to do today, and get up every
There
day
we
and say, reporting
go.
for duty, sir, and then go do that. And nothing's a crisis, everything's a task, right? And so that's what I'm going to be, kind of a happy warrior. I know what I have to do, so I'm going to do it.
There we go. I love that so much. You know what? There's actually a scripture that that describes that perfectly, and I love it so much. Let me share it real quick. It is Matthew 6:34. Let me find actually a good translation. Matthew 6:34 describes this beautifully. ICB, I love ICB. All right, anybody who knows translation, they know ICB is low key goat, but these are the words of Jesus. He says, "So don't worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Tomorrow will have its own worries." So I was just really inspired right now when Kennedy's like, "I don't really know. I don't really think about those things. I don't know what's gonna happen if we lose." But I kind of love this unity here between RFK Jr. and Trump. And he also goes ahead and discusses more deeply like why he ended up endorsing President Trump. But check this out. This is about a 3-minute clip, but it is phenomenal.
The most radical step you can make if you're a
This also does speak to kind of the difficulty of this decision and also his wife's perspective and how lightly he did not take this conversation at all. Like here he discusses that he met with experts, very influential people, and he just got a lot of support from other individuals and he just took their perspective and he was making a very informed decision. So to some of the people whose perspective is more along the lines of, "Oh my gosh, how dare you, 70 days away, you couldn't hold on just a little bit longer, what's going on?" Listen, okay, listen to the words of Kennedy here. It's really valuable.
Democrat is endorsing Donald Trump. So there are political calculations involved, there are ideological calculations, but there are also, of course, personal calculations. So once you do that, you've burned your boats. Like, that's it. You're not going back to wherever you were 10 years ago. How hard a decision was that for you personally?
It was a very good. It was an obvious decision for me. It should have been, but it was a very, very difficult decision. And we had, I have a very, very good team around me, and I was most worried about my wife, who was about Cheryl, who it was not comfortable with it. She's a lifelong Democrat. She comes from not the aristocracy. She comes from a very, I would say, poor family in North Florida, but she found her way through idealism to the Democratic Party, and she shares a lot of those values. So and her industry is very, very much aligned with the Democratic Party probably more than any industry in our country and more than any town in our country. This, for me, was likely to have huge impacts on her. And ultimately, if she had told me, you can't do this, I wouldn't have done it. So,
Wow.
but I
Isn't this so expressive of how powerful the influence is of the woman in our life? Like that it's astronomical. He just said that if his wife Cheryl did not essentially give him permission to endorse President Trump, that he would have stayed in the race. Like that is monumental, but also huge shout out to Cheryl, his wife, for essentially putting her country first, even though there were some strong ideological differences there. Wow, that's huge.
I'm very grateful that she allowed me to do it. She was not embracing it, but she said, "I understand why you have to do this." And
Wow.
um, her and we had a 4-day meeting and up in Hyannisport, my home, where kind of everybody, my family members, my kids, many other people, Tony Robbins, uh, attended remote.
That is so impressive. The fact that you have one of the greatest communicators on the planet, that one of the greatest self-development heroes of our generation, like that is monumental. Wow.
And a number of other kind of spiritual leaders, just people who care deeply about our country, chimed in and made case on both sides. And people from the campaign organization did. But here was the calculus that ultimately was persuasive for me. My if I all of our internal polling showed from the outset that if I stayed in the Democratic Party, I was going to get Vice President Harris elected. 57 to 60%, and even more, sometimes up to 66% of my voters, so my followers said that if I withdrew from the election, they were going to vote for Trump, which is ironic, by the way, Tucker, because
Also, I just want to backtrack that just ever so slightly because I want to pay attention to that line, and I want you to pay attention to that line.
66% of my voters, so my followers said that if I withdrew from the election, they were going to vote for Trump.
So 66% of the people who follow him. So because there's still a significant amount of the Kennedy population who is still very disrupted by the fact that Kennedy has suspended his campaign. And I know so many of the comments, I see you. So many of the comments are like, guys, he didn't drop out of the race. He's still in it in the majority of states. I hear you. Okay, I hear you. All right. But like he just said, 66% of the people, that's a huge chunk. But also a huge chunk is the nearly 34% of the people who are still like undecided, right? 66 said they would eventually vote for Trump, but the other 34 undecided. So I just wanted to acknowledge the 34% of the people who are still disrupted here, okay? I hear you. It's gonna be okay. Make an informed decision. If you're in a deep blue or deep red, you can still vote for him, and I think you'll be very happy. I just saw something happening in California where there was like almost like a low key rally for him, and I think that's incredible. You know, in California, you I believe you will still be able to vote for Kennedy, and that's great. But it is really I feel like this has to be maybe an uncomfortable video for you too, because Kennedy just said, "I'm working to help Trump get elected." Kennedy just said, "I'm working on his policies to make sure that, or I'm working together in collaboration with his policies." Like, I don't know. That has to be somewhat of an uncomfortable experience, but I just wanted to acknowledge that reality for a quick second.
For Trump, which is ironic, by the way, Tucker, because President Trump and the RNC did nothing to prevent me from being on the ballots. They didn't have a big major organization sending private eyes out. The Democratic Party was interviewing literally everybody I've ever met in 70 years to collect dirt on me. I got a
They've been
call.
doing that, I know for a fact, for over a year, as you know.
That is absurd, and that says a lot about where the Republican Party is right now, and how the Republican Party is I would say way more Democratic than the Democratic Party, which is what an absurd sentence to make. But I do think that's where we are right now. But again, you know what? I welcome Democrats here too. So appreciate you for being here. And the last thing that I want to share today is RFK Jr. on the phone here. And I believe he shares some really really awesome thoughts, a little bit more insight onto what led him to kind of make this decision show, and also what he's planning on doing with the Trump campaign. So check this out.
Mainstream media had successfully stonewalled me. So, I gave 2 live interviews on the major networks in 16 months. Ross Perot had 34 interviews in 10 months. I only had 2 live interviews on ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN. And so I was being stonewalled there. I was not going to be allowed on the debating stage. And that really was my path to victory. I could not talk to most Americans. So it became clear to me that we did not have a clear path to the White House, and that if I stayed in the race, that the likelihood was that my presence in the race would get the Vice President Harris elected.
Wow.
Vice President Harris from
Also, it's really interesting to see Kennedy say that it was clear to me that we didn't have a clear path to the White House. And I just think that's very expressive of kind of the emotional season that he's in right now with this campaign. Because, guys, I see all the comments, and so many people are still like, what are you doing, Adam? Are you dumb? Like, he could still win in a contingent election. And just to be clear, you are right. He can win in a contingent election. I'm just saying, even Kennedy himself isn't really like rallying on that. He's not really hoping on that. He doesn't really see that as a clear option or a clear way to the White House. So I hear you. I see your comments, but I think I'm with Kennedy here, where he says that's not a clear path to the White House. Am I saying it's impossible? Absolutely not. Do I give myself permission to change my mind in the future? Absolutely. But as of right now, today, Monday, August 26th, I'm with Kennedy here.
for me is and if you looked at her speech during the Democratic convention, it was a deep state speech. She was preceded weirdly by CIA officials who were speaking at
Right.
at the Democratic election, and military officials, and it was a neocon speech that was about more wars and more wars and more wars, and that is the only policy she's really defined herself as.
Right.
And I think we're so close to World War III right now. We're so close to nuclear exchange with the Russians. And then the Trump administration, President Trump reached out to me immediately after his shooting. And we began talking.
I also want to say something else real quick. President Trump reached out to him after the shooting immediately. And there's a lot of people who are like, "Oh my gosh, like Trump, I can't vote for Trump. This was who he was in 2016. This is who he was in 2020. I just can't." And I just want to be very clear. People change. Okay? Have a traumatic experience, have a near death experience. People change. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that Trump has ever done anything bad, absolutely, but what I'm saying is that a bad moment does not make a bad person, okay? Trump could have had a bad experience, Trump could have made a bad decision, but I don't think it's fair to accuse a bad moment and identify someone completely in totality as a bad person or an evil person. The media is really good at depicting it that way, but I think I think people should be extending some grace here. So, but I'll let RFK Jr. finish his thought right here.
Talking. We had a series of meetings by telephone and in person in Minneapolis and in Mar-a-Lago. And talked about the things that surprised me that we had in common, that he wants to end the Ukraine war immediately. He wants to protect children's health. He wants to end the censorship. And those are the three principal reasons that I got in the race. And he asked me, not only to join this election, but to help him in his administration to make sure they're able to accomplish some of those goals. And to do a unity party where we would be able to criticize each other on the issues on which we disagree, but continue to work for a greater good on the issues that really unite Americans and that are good for our country.
That's the way it should be.
Wow. How beautiful is that? That is the way it should be. People who don't always see eye to eye, but they're able to come together for something incredible. I wrote this tweet. I wrote this tweet the other day. Also, if you're not following me on X, go ahead, shoot me a follow. Follow me on Instagram. It's awesome. And I wrote, yesterday we saw many Kennedy and Trump supporters embrace each other. This is the unity I've been wanting for our country. People who don't always experience reality the same way, but choose to move past their differences in order to push humanity forward. I am fueled by this moment. This is the path towards healing division. For humanity, for service of others, this is the way of unity. Let's work together to create a new future. Wow. And here's this completely gangster moment of Kennedy walking on stage with Trump at the Trump rally in Glendale, Arizona. Anyways, let me know what you think about all this. I'd love to hear your perspective. Let me know where you're at right now in this election, who you're planning on casting your vote for. Are you in a red state? You're in a blue state? You're going to still vote for Kennedy, or are you in a battleground state? And do you have a decision to make? Let me know where you are. I'm very open to hearing your insights and your perspective and your worldview here. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening. I appreciate your time so much, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support what we're building here, please like and subscribe. It means a lot and it really helps us out. And if you want to see even more content from me, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be sharing a lot more on there. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.